Have a bunch of 35mm slides that have been collecting dust in carousels for years. Here's a very low-tech, probably even could be considered a no-tech way to convert them to a digital format using your cell phone. The first order of business is to determine the minimum focal length of your camera so that you can get good sharp focus. That's about 2.5 inches. Next, you want to dig through your Christmas wrapping stuff and find a wrapping paper tube that is large enough in diameter so that a slide image will fit inside it. A toilet paper wrapping tube is probably too small. Next, I want to make a pencil mark the minimum focal distance of my camera, which I said was 2.5 inches, so I'll make that line right there. I need to know the distance from the edge of my camera to the center of the camera lens, and in this case it is 3/4 of an inch. I need to make a notch in the tube now that is the width of my cell phone, beginning where I made my focal length mark. I'm going to extend marks all the way around so that I can accurately make that notch. Since the distance of the lens from the edge of the phone was 3/4 of an inch, I have to make a notch twice that deep so to make sure that the lens is centered. So since my tube is actually 2 inches in diameter, my notch is going to have to be 1.5 inches deep, which is only going to leave 1/2 inch of paper left, widthwise, left on this tube. So it's going to be a pretty deep notch. So I've made my first cut with a razor blade, and you can see that it's a pretty deep cut going most of the way through the tube. So the tricky part is to make the second cut the width of the cell phone. Okay, now I've made my second cut so that my cell phone will fit in there. Try to make it so it's a little snug, but not too snug. And then check it to make sure that the lens, camera lens, is centered in the tube. Next thing to do is to cut the tube off at the other end about 1 inch beyond your notch. You could have done that first, but it's a little easier to cut the notch because the tube has more support with its length. The next thing I did was add some clear tape around the tube to give it some stability, and I put a little piece of 1/4 inch dowel in there to give it stability across a gap. You could use part of a pencil or something, but it's optional. Don't do it all the way to the end. Now for the slide holder. I cut out a couple of small pieces of packing foam to fit on the top and the bottom of the tube to hold the slide. It's going to have slots in it. If your tube is bigger than 2 inches, you're going to have to cut a piece with a notch in it on the underside so that it fits down in the tube, so to make sure and catch the edges of the slide. You just have to do a little measuring. I need to cut slits for the slide to fit into the foam, and I'm not going to make a channel. I'm just making a single cut, maybe 3/8 of an or 1/4 of an inch, and not very deep, maybe 1/8 of an inch deep at the most. Most tedious part of the operation might require a second pair of hands to hold the foam in place while it's taped down. It needs to be, the slit needs to be right at the end of the tube so the slide will fit right up against the end of the tube, and it needs to be aligned with your slot, the remaining paper from your slot. Then tape it down and do the exact same thing on the bottom side. The last step is to add a light diffuser, which is nothing more than a piece of copy paper with a fold in it, scotch taped to the top piece of foam so that it hangs over the end of the tube. It doesn't have to be closed. These pictures are best taken outdoors against a blue sky. You can take them indoors, but a diffuser is important so that either the color isn't changed by the light or you don't see the actual light bulb patterns through the slide. Remember, these are transparencies that you're working with. So let's give it a try. Even though the image emulsion is not square, the cardboard holder is. So depending on the orientation of the image, it doesn't matter which way you put it in the slots. It will fit in both directions. So I'm going to slide it in. And then I'm going to do an initial look down through the tube to see if it's centered and squared before I put it onto the phone. Okay, so I put the tube on the camera, and I open up my camera function on my cell phone and see if it's centered and straight up and down. And if it is, and when the automatic focus kicks in, I just go ahead and take my picture. That's all there is to it. For those of you who are a little bit more ambitious and want to go from no-tech to low-tech, you can use a piece of ABS plumbing pipe. Follow the same instructions that you did for the cardboard tube, and in some respects it's a little easier because you can cut a slot right in the pipe for the slide rather than having the foam taped on with slits. Make sure you put your light diffuser over the edge. Works the same way.